William K. Murtaugh, Mert Witness 1, and this is a Saturday Mobilethon. Now, today we are still in the election cliffhanger marathon as we wait for the counts to come in and for Joe Biden to be finally declared the winner. Because I'm pretty certain that's what's going to happen. Now, the Q-tards don't like it. Well, that's just too damn bad. Because the country functions on fact, not on fairy tales. Now, the QAnon phenomenon is something that I have been scratching my head about for the past 3 or 4 years when this nonsense came floating out of a nonsensical pornography website known as 8chan, which used to be 8chan, which is also affiliated with 4chan. Now, these websites cater to the losers of the world, people that simply are not acceptable to anyone. So they hide in their basements and they come up with utter and complete nonsense, and QAnon is the latest product of that nonsense. QAnon, after being this dark camp movement, grew exponentially, largely because Russia and other foreign countries saw it as a tool in which to deceive in what turned out to be an easily misleading and gullible public. The people that fell for the Q nonsense are desperate for attention. They're desperate to be something that matters, when in fact they are themselves nothings that are not accepted by society as a whole. They hide in their little home compounds. They drive around in cars full of junk. They spew nonsense on the various social media channels. And some sit in house arrest waiting for the mainstream courts to eke out justice of some kind. But today, in this election marathon that we seem to be having, or vote-a-thon as you might want to call it, their last gasp of attention is playing out, even though their leader seems to abandon them. According to sources, the person or persons that are supposed to be the actual Q has gone AWOL, hasn't been heard of since Friday. And as a matter of fact, I don't think he's been heard of since Election Day. Now, a copycat Q or someone with access to the Q account might come in and post again just to reassure these gullible fools that the leader is still around. But eventually, Q is going to fade into oblivion. Joe Biden is going to be elected president. We're going to have the inauguration. Donald J. Trump, either voluntarily or involuntary, is going to leave the White House and prepare for his legal defenses for the multitude of criminal charges against him, as well as a multitude of civil lawsuits, which is the only reason he wants to remain president. He doesn't care about anybody but himself. The only thing that Trump knows is that as long as he remains in the White House, he's immune from prosecution. And that is about to come to a quick end as the prosecutors eagerly await the day when Trump becomes a private citizen. Now, another fascinating aspect in all this are the people that comment on my channel. Now, the bulk of the comments aren't substantive political debate. They're personal insults. People don't like my voice. So these mental midgets resort to odd comments and insults. And the funny thing is, they don't do anything themselves. They don't have YouTube channels, live streams. Some have rather obscure Facebook accounts, nonsensical accounts over on Twitter where they talk to themselves between the various accounts that they alone have set up as if they're different people. And they worship a dead pizza delivery driver and write stuff in his name. Now, we've had this pizza delivery driver, unemployed of course, who has vanished off the face of the earth. People pretend to write in his name, but it's pretty well concluded that he's dead because there's been no proof of life. Simple thing to do. But the last actual proof of life was the end of May. And even then, that incident is in question. So the true verifiable proof of life actually goes back into March, when the person in question posed in front of a dock full of yachts owned by a boat dealer. So good riddance is a good thing to call it, because without actual proof that this person is among the living, it's rather difficult for people to believe in anything they see on his various websites. And so you have this speculation that he's no longer alive. No one seems willing to dispute it, at least in any serious fashion. And so we can pretty well say goodbye to that bad news. You know, that people continue to stream in his name various past conspiracy theories that he has spewed over the years and try to adapt what he's done in the past to the present. But that's all they have left. They have absolutely nothing. Instead, they troll. They troll accounts like mine, try to get a rise out of us, try to make us mad, try to make us do stuff that may get us in a situation where we violate community standards, get a strike against us for one thing or another. Again, that's all they got. They think they can get ahead by silencing others, and it's not working. And in the end, they're going to wind up being ignored, because people are tired of hearing about them. Even those who support me are getting tired of hearing about them, and they say, let it go. Let it rest. They're no longer relevant. And they're right. They're not. So in the coming days, you're going to hear less and less about unemployed pizza delivery drivers and a handler hiding out in her own house, facing divorce, cast off by her own children, not allowed to see her own grandchildren, and other characters in this comedy that's been playing out for the last couple of years. There'll be a trial coming up that I'll cover. There'll actually be a number of them. We've got a trial in Florida. We've got a trial in Colorado. Got a hearing in Arkansas. Another possible trial out in Utah. But that's about it. Bunch of trials that relatively few people care about. Maybe 30, 40 people at the most care about these particular trials. And I'm gonna kind of start to talk about other things. My Mesa project I'm going to start talking about. Other projects I'm going to start talking about. I'm going to be talking about technology too. I'm a gadget buff. I like talking about different gadgets. And I like cross-purposing. So you're going to see videos about how I cross-purpose things, just for the fun of it. My live truck was the biggest example of a cross-purpose. I took a live truck out of inventory after it came off lease, turned it in to an early version of an internet live stream vehicle. I was the only one in the United States doing that when I first started that up. I did for pennies on the dollar what networks spend thousands of dollars doing. And some of them didn't like it, and they retaliated a little bit, but in the end, they adapted the same technique I did to their own purposes. When it became clear that there was money in live streaming over the internet. And there'll be other things I talk about. There is some footage that'll probably be coming out from the Chaos Project that I had set aside for use later on. General topics, not so much specific to why I went up there in the first place, but other takes on the trip. But just like Q, it's time for a change. Now, to drift back to Q for a minute, I find it intriguing that so many people put their faith and, in a lot of cases, their money behind this mysterious Q. Because there's no proof of anything that this Q has espoused. None of what Q has predicted has come true. JFK Jr. is not Vice President of the United States. As a matter of fact, not much has been heard from JFK Jr. or the person who decided to be JFK Jr. And there has been nothing about the actual background of Q. I mean, there's been stories made up, a dossier that he's some intelligence official within the structure of the U.S. government who has decided on his own, and maybe with a couple of colleagues, to take on the deep state, which doesn't exist. At least not in the way the gullible public thinks it exists. And they're playing a bunch of people in the United States and a few people around the world for fools. And they're probably in a cafe somewhere or a bar, getting drunk, taking drugs, and laughing their asses off at how stupid the people are that believe the gibberish that they put on the internet. And it's the supposedly religious people out there that are hanging on to every word that QAnon exhorts seem to be believers in a quasi astrology theory or philosophy. Because in the end, when you look at the nonsense that Q puts up and all these code words and catchphrases and everything, it looks like a modern day astrology. That they're using charts and diagrams and mathematical formulas and playing with numbers. And believing in the kind of things that you would look towards the extreme left believing in. Numerology, astrology, all sorts of the supernatural stuff out there that everyday Christians criticize as blasphemy. But that is because, in the end, the Q followers know nothing about anything. They don't know how things work. And they allow some mysterious fathom to think for them. These people cannot think for themselves. It comes out in their responses when confronted with the truth. I've been doing this for over a year in this particular case, and even longer, and it's consistent that when these people are confronted with the truth, they have nothing to respond with, so they resort to trolling and personal attacks, making stuff up out of thin air that they know isn't true, and they don't care what damage is done with their continuing lies and misrepresentations of the facts. They get off on it. They get the attention. They get the likes. They get the thumbs up. That's all they want. They don't care about the truth. They just want the attention. And that's what the take is on all this. And the followers, they just like, it's kind of like watching a soap opera. They just follow it for the story. Most of them don't believe in what QAnon and the QAnon followers talk about. But they follow it because it's kind of like a little soap opera. They want to see what the next chapter is going to be. They want to see what these idiots are going to come up with next. And what they find on a continuing basis is they're not coming up with anything. And so in order to keep the story going, these Q nuts go out, troll the sites like mine that are trying to tell the truth about things, and try to get a rise out of us so that they can go back and say, oh, look, this mean old retired truck driver over here is picking on us. And they go so far as to say, we're going to report you to YouTube for this, that, and the other thing. Because they don't like being exposed as the frauds that they are. They're scared. And the posts and the comments they put on my channel prove it. You go through and read some of the comments that are put on my various Mobilethons, and you see it there. They have nothing to talk about. I mean, some of them go off on book-length comments espousing the same nonsense that Q has spouted for years, but in the end, there's nothing there. It's a nothing burger. People don't like my voice, which is fine. I've been told I sound like Kermit the Frog. But I'm not a professional broadcaster. If I was, I wouldn't be broadcasting on YouTube. I'd be in a studio at a commercial radio station, maybe one like the one down on John Young Parkway here in Orlando, talking there and making decent money in the process. But I don't have a commercially viable voice. once again, for those who don't seem to have a brain, I'm a private citizen with an extremely small YouTube channel, and I talk about what I feel like talking about. I'm not being paid, I'm not being directed, I'm not part of any big group that says that they're going to go out and do this, that, or the other thing. I'm me. I got a desktop computer, a microphone, well, a headset in this case, and an internet connection. I say my piece, and then I go about my life, and that's it. And I do these Mobilethons as a way to kill time on the way back and forth from the airport. Sometime, and then I edit them while I'm going to and from where I go to and from. It's a time killer. It's a way for me to speak my piece, just like people have done for decades. People used to do the Andy of Mayberry thing. They'd go to the local hardware store / grocery store, sit around the wood-burning stove or the pickle barrel and shoot the shit. Or you go down to the local tavern, you get with a bunch of friends, and you sit there and you shoot the shit. Well, I'm shooting the shit on YouTube. I used to do it with the marathons, which I'm probably going to cut back on because it's kind of hard to sit there and come up with something to talk about for 3 hours. And then in the end, when you're only getting 9 or 10 people listening to it, it's more productive to make one of these things where eventually 100 people will listen to it. If not all of it, at least part of it, enough to get the score up. I'm honing in on 50,000 viewing hours on YouTube. That's a lot of hours that people pay attention in one way or another to this channel. From the people that agree with me and the majority of people that don't agree with me. So in the end, it's productive. The only hiccup seems to be that I can't break the 1,000 subscriber mark. And it doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon, which is fine. You know, it's a goal I'd like to meet, but if I don't meet it, I'm not going to cry in my soup about it. Because I'm accomplishing what I want to accomplish without the 1,000 subscribers, excuse me. You know, if it happens, it happens. But I, like most business people, learn to have contingency plans. So as a retired individual, I apply the same practice. I've got a contingency plans for what's going to happen if I do not get to the 1,000 subscriber mark anytime soon. The only thing that the 1,000 subscriber mark is going to enable me to do is to cover court cases easier and more thoroughly. There's a lot I can do if I can get to that 1,000 subscriber mark. If anybody had followed my coverage of the Casey Anthony case, they'd know that I had a great deal of access to the Florida court system, and I still do in a lot of instances. And I was able to live stream trials, hearings, directly from the court, using court equipment. That's one of my goals, is to get access to that equipment, and I'm very close to it. Now YouTube, for whatever reason, imposed this 1,000 subscriber limit on mobile live streams. Now you can live stream from your house until you're blue in the face. You can go on the air, you can live stream, sitting behind your desk, maybe out in your front yard or someplace, but it's stationary. You can go out and do what I'm doing now and record mobile videos and then upload them to YouTube. But you can't live stream mobile live. And it's a dumb rule. I don't understand it. Nobody at YouTube has explained it to me yet. Because there's very little difference in what you're doing. YouTube doesn't own AT&T. So anything that comes through YouTube from AT&T, which has to be my carrier, isn't going to cost them a penny more than if it comes through AT&T from my desktop or from my laptop or from over Wi-Fi sitting in a McDonald's or in a hotel somewhere. It doesn't matter. But for some reason, if you go mobile on AT&T, you have to have 1,000 people for it to get up onto YouTube. Now, this isn't required by Twitter if you want to live stream mobile through Periscope to Twitter. You can do it. Now, I'm somewhat limited with Twitter, what I can do. My audience is limited. So I chose to do most of what I do over on YouTube. Because the material that I live stream is able to be viewed repeatedly by people who want to go back and look at the old stuff. It's harder to do on Periscope and Twitter. It's doable, but it's harder. And because of that, YouTube is a more practical platform until I find something else. And since most of my subscribers are on YouTube at the moment, that's the platform I choose in order to get out my opinions and anything I choose to cover. Now, when I finally start my new format and talking about different things, I'm not sure if this is going to generate new subscribers or not. I hope it does. You know, I'm 60 subscribers from reaching that 1,000 subscriber goal and getting the number a little bit over 1,000, so I sustain that level. Because you need 1,010 or 1,020 in order to maintain that 1,000. Because there's always going to be people that for some strange reason they come in and they subscribe and then they turn around and they unsubscribe. They can't leave alone the fact that they've subscribed and say, well, I don't want to talk to this guy anymore or listen to this guy anymore, so they don't tune in, but they also unsubscribe. You know, that's fine. They're able to unsubscribe. I'm not going to scream about it. I would prefer that they leave it. You know, even if they come in, subscribe, and not listen to my webcast, it's the subscriber number that counts. You know, I would prefer that they pay attention to my content and so forth and like it and spread it around, but if they don't, they don't. But my primary goal at this point is to get up to that 1,000 level. So if anybody happens across this nonsense, would like to help out, I really would appreciate if you would subscribe and leave your subscription active and see if you couldn't get other people to subscribe as a favor, just to help a guy out. You know, because it's not my choice that I need all these subscribers. It's a goal that I have to meet in order to expand my ability to cover things and to do things on YouTube. It's one of these roadblocks that YouTube set up for whatever reason, that some genius in a cubicle somewhere came up with. So I have to live with the rules. That's YouTube's a rule. You gotta have 1,000 subscribers if you're gonna live stream from a car. And what is funny about YouTube is what people subscribe to. Some of the biggest subscribers on YouTube, the draws that is, are videos of animals. And the animals are doing all kinds of funny things. Cats jump to get up on a shelf and they don't make it and they go falling down on the floor. Or you got cats that, you have literal cat fights where the cats just fight each other. Or these animals do funny things. And then there's the videos of people being completely stupid. They do things that you would think would get them paralyzed for life. Jumping off of a building into a swimming pool, jumping between two buildings, climbing up on 1,000-foot high buildings, and parasailing off the top of them, doing the regular stupid things. And the single most popular YouTube channels are car crash channels. People that drive stupid, get themselves into all kinds of accidents. I watch those. People that pull out in front of trucks and slam on their brakes and they make a piece of scrap metal out of a $20,000 car. It's just the stupid things that people subscribe to. And then there's Q. The same mental midgets subscribe to various Q channels. And for a while, YouTube allowed it because they were making money off the personal information that people need to get into YouTube. When you fill out that little thing on Google or YouTube that gets sold to those companies that send you all that spam in your emails. And you see those weird ads for things that you went over on Amazon to look at, and all of a sudden they start showing up on YouTube. Stuff like that. You're a money machine for YouTube. And when you don't make money for YouTube, you're out the door. Because if you start costing YouTube money, you're no good to them. People don't understand that. They don't understand, well, why is YouTube throwing QAnon channels off the air? That's to do with money. YouTube creates money from content. The content is provided by people like me and people like whoever is behind all this QAnon nonsense. And YouTube doesn't care about you, me, or anyone else unless it starts costing them money. And when you get people that go on YouTube and see that an advertiser is supporting a content, they're going to say, all right, we're going to boycott that sponsor because he's supporting QAnon. And they start writing letters to the sponsors who pay for those little commercials that go in the videos of channels where people don't have ad blockers or don't have premium YouTube to where you don't have to look at all the commercials. And when this gets back to YouTube by the advertisers, say, hey, we're getting complaints about this QAnon channel. We don't want to be on this QAnon channel. Put us somewhere else. And if YouTube gets enough of this, they say, fine. We'll do that. But they're also going to go back and they're going to see this as a trend and they're going to say, all right, QAnon, you're done. Boom, out the door. And that's what's happening here. they're getting backlash. The federal government is finally stepping in, and they're in the process of putting an end to this nonsense. Because when it starts costing these social media accounts money, and the federal government starts saying, if you people don't clean up your act, we're going to start enacting laws, you're going to see channels disappear, and they're going to disappear fast. Because one thing that social media doesn't want is regulation. They don't want the fairness doctrine. They don't want to see the repeal of the protection they got against civil liability because of their subscribers. Because that would mean they'd have to change their business plan and eliminate all these YouTube channels like mine, like Supporters of Q and other hot issue channels, and become more and more like Netflix every day, where the content they put up there isn't going to upset everybody. Now, there's this big lawsuit in effect that's probably going to be thrown out, where all these banned channels from YouTube are suing because the First Amendment rights have been violated. Well, I hate to break it to these people, but there's no First Amendment right to be on YouTube. YouTube has the right to refuse business. It's a constitutional right, as a matter of fact. It's been demonstrated in the Supreme Court. There was a ruling in the Supreme Court that a bakery who was making cakes had the right to refuse service, to refuse business. And there's similar rulings out there. And so anyone that thinks that they're going to win a lawsuit against YouTube because the video is taken down or the channel is taken down are basically going to make a lawyer rich and themselves that much poorer, because it ain't going to happen. Court's going to say there is no constitutional right to be on YouTube, there is no constitutional right to be on Facebook, and there is no constitutional right to be on Twitter. These companies are privately owned. Or they're a corporation. They're not a newspaper. There's nothing that says that you have the right to go on any of these accounts. You know, this is the problem with people. They don't understand the law. They don't understand the Constitution. They don't understand that not only do they have rights, but the businesses have rights. And since the government, for the most part, is influenced by businesses, the businesses are ultimately going to win. If they fight hard enough for something, they're going to win. So these people going to court saying they want their YouTube channel back, they can hang it up. They ain't happening. They may as well go and find another company, another streaming service that'll allow them to put up their nonsense. Or maybe some of the rich among you people out there can go out and buy your own domain, server, and do it yourself. You can become an internet portal, and it's not as hard as one thinks. We used to do it back in the days before the World Wide Web. It's not that hard to do. And you can start your own YouTube-like service. And you can have all the right-wing people and the Q-nuts and all the idiots on your server. Make yourself a lot of money. That's why I don't understand these people that go out and rely on hosting services for their internet. You can do it yourself. But people have forgotten how to do things. And so they go out and they go to somebody like GoDaddy or Blue Yonder or some of these foreign hosting services, and they pay them to do it. It's funny. Because they don't know how the technology works. No, it's not cheap. There's things you have to do in order to become a portal. But it's doable. There are startups doing it all the time. And there'll probably be more if the United States starts to break down these monopolies. It's going to be surprising how many of these portals are going to start up. Which is one of these things I'm going to talk about in the future, is how to set up your own hosting service. It's relatively easy to do. Now, you people that believe in QAnon, you can take about $50,000 to $100,000 and you can start your own portal. You don't have to worry about being censored. May wind up in a lot of serious trouble legally in the civil courts, but it's doable. May have to go out and buy yourself some liability insurance to protect yourself if you're smart. A lot of you wouldn't. But it's kind of like operating a pirate radio station. It's doable. You don't need a hosting service. So, sometime down the road I'll talk about that. It's something that I intended to do years ago, but decided that it wasn't worth the money. Because it's, to get the startup cost for doing it is a little bit on the high side. But it's getting cheaper every day. And eventually I think you're going to see a lot of people doing their own hosting. They'll go to ICANN, they'll register their domain, they'll put the domain on their own hosting service, and, from then on, it's just like setting up your own radio station or having a pirate station out in the middle of the ocean, and nobody's going to be able to shut you down. The United States government can try, but it's not as easy as one thinks to shut down a domain or a hosting. Instead, they go after the domains that are being hosted. And that's not easy. So that's going to be in the future. I think you're going to see a lot more hosting going on by self-service domains. That they're gonna put up the hosting for themselves. They may offer hosting services to other domains, but primarily the purpose of the hosting is for them to put their own stuff on the air and like-minded people on the air. So it's going to be interesting to see how that happens. That's kind of sort of what Gab is, but they don't do domain hosting. They just allow you to post content on their channel. And then if it's too far to the left, they pull you off. They do a kind of censoring. So, anyway, that's enough babbling. I doubt anybody's going to listen to this all the way through. If they did, I admire your patience. But we're going to watch the vote-a-thon here for the next day or two. This Saturday, we're supposed to know tonight, you would think, that Biden has actually won this thing. Now, there's some technical stuff that has to be done over the next few weeks, and there's going to be the inevitable court challenges, which are bound to fail. But in the end, I think we're going to find that Joe Biden is the new 46th President of the United States, and then we're going to have the first woman of color Vice President of the United States. And what happens after that is anybody's guess. But if it's relevant, I'll talk about it. So, this is William K. Murtaugh, Mert Witness 1. See you later. Have a good one.